سبحان الله والحمد لله ولا إله إلا الله والله أكبر.
Bismillah, alhamdulillah, wa salatu wassalam rasulullah. The praises to Allah, the peace and the blessings be upon His last and final messenger. I'm Yusuf Estes, your host today here on The Deen Show, and we're talking about dealing with some of the harsh attacks against Islam and some of the harsh questions that people present. And we want to discuss that a little bit from the point of view of the Muslim who really hasn't studied Islam that much, but he knows basically, I'm a Muslim and I believe in Allah. We have something called the Quran. We do something called Salah 5 times a day. But really, as far as being a scholar, no, I'm not a scholar, but now I'm getting these questions coming at me and people are almost attacking me. How do I deal with that in the Western world? And this is what our program is about today. This is what we're dealing with. To be fair, I want to explain to you the other side of the coin. All right, let's understand who's coming at us and why. The reason is because there's a tremendous amount of exposure about Islam in the news, in the media, and various places. You can go on the internet and magazines that you pick up in an airport. Everywhere you go, you're hearing reminders about Islam, Islam, Islam. Most of it, by the way, is negative. It's coming from a very bad angle. It's okay, though, because as we know, it's also helping people to learn about Islam, the real Islam, and that's maybe why Islam has increased in its growth pattern more in the last decade than it did the decade before. Even before the events that took place on September the 11th in 2001, Islam was already the fastest growing religion in the world. Since that time, there have been periods when it even exceeded what it was doing before that. And the reason could be attributed to the large number of people who are seeking knowledge about Islam because they want to know, what is this religion all about? I heard this, I heard that, I hear conflicting stories, I'm seeing debates, so let me find out for myself. And then when they do, if Allah guides them, we got a new brother or a new sister in Islam. And it's been tremendous, not just here in the United States, but in Canada, even down in Mexico, South America, Central America. I just came back from Germany. I was in Australia. We were in South Africa. All this year we've been going from place to place and seeing this increase of people being curious. They want to know, become aware more of what is Islam. And we find that after they know and understand, we have a whole lot more friends and even a lot more of the folks who said, you know what, I want to believe in one God and I want to do what He wants me to do, which is what Islam is really all about. So, in the interest of time, I'm not going to bore you with a whole lot of references. Those of you who know Islam, you know we have to have reference from the two sources. So understand that if you need more of that, we have it on our websites. I'm going to be talking about our websites, so you can make a note of this from the beginning, that you only need to know about one website that we have, which will help you get to all of the others. It's called Links to Islam. And you can use the number 2, or you can use TO because we bought both of them, all right? Links to Islam, and this is where you'll find the list of all of our websites there that I'm going to be talking about, so you don't have to worry about writing them all down. Now let's get started. First of all, someone comes to you, and they see you perhaps dressed with your Sunnah dress, your cultural background. Maybe you have a kufi on or the thobe like I'm wearing, and they say, are you a Muslim? Okay, now what you going to do? Already you're like, I don't want to be in problem here. I just want to be left alone, yeah? So you say yes. How come you're a terrorist? Okay, just like this. This could happen. Usually people aren't that way. They're usually not that way, but occasionally you see something like that. That's what I call a harsh question. But if somebody said to you, are you a Muslim? And you say yes, and he said, well, I want to know about terrorism and Islam. That's not a harsh question. There's a difference. Because one is implying that you have something to do with it, the other one is just asking a real upfront question. Here's an example that I use many times when I'm dealing with people when they do come with these questions. And the example is I ask them, Do you know the difference between a question and a statement that has a question mark? When somebody asks you, answer me yes or no. Just yes or no is your two choices. Is your mother out of jail yet? That's a question, but it's a loaded question. It's a statement. It's saying your mother's in jail. I don't want to hear something like that, do you? Talking about my mother? So is your mother out of jail yet? Hey man, you talking about my... No, yes or no? My mother never been in jail. Yes or no? What are you talking about? Yes or no? Or shall we just say, well, when we asked him about his mother being in jail, he said he had no comment. So is she in jail or not? This, I would say, no. But it's not what he's asking. He's saying, is she out yet? There's the implication. You say, well, she's not in, she's therefore out. Is she out of jail? Yes. Good, I'm glad she got out. See, no matter how I answer the question, it was a stacked up question. It wasn't fair. That's harsh. Even though it wasn't said in a harsh way, the harshness here is in the statement that's being implied in the question. Like when we said, how come you're a terrorist? Because I said I'm a Muslim, you automatically say this? Okay, that's not right. Well, it isn't fair. Here's another one that I've heard. Because at one point they were trying to say all Muslims are terrorists. You know that. So obviously that can't be true. All you have to do is meet one Muslim and you already know that's not true. So then they came up with a new one and they said, well, not all Muslims are terrorists. But how come it is that all terrorists are Muslims? Implying what? That any act of terror that ever happened in the world had to be a Muslim behind it. So that means Timothy McVeigh, who blew up the federal building in Oklahoma City, must have made a secret shahada. We never knew about it. Huh? The fact that he was actually a well-known Christian and what he did was because of his religion. Okay, but all of a sudden now we have to accept him as a Muslim because he did an act of terror. I want to share with you a couple of points for your own benefit about terrorism. Let's talk about this a little bit, because there are some words that have been translated into English from Quran that said terror. To strike terror in the hearts of your enemy. This is clear in Islam. Strike terror in the hearts of your enemy. Well, what's wrong with that? Is there something wrong with that? Did Mr. Bush go over to Afghanistan and tell people that, while we're bombing you, we'd like to play some nice, soft, gentle music so that you won't be terrorized? Excuse me? Of course, that goes with when you're in a war, when you're having enemies who are attacking. There's the idea of scaring them is good because maybe then they'll stop fighting and you don't have to kill them. That's even better, isn't it? I mean, it doesn't make sense that you would have a war of flowers and roses. That doesn't make any sense. It really doesn't. Now, as far as this expression of using the word terror, it was actually used long before there were any Muslims, long before Islam comes, before Christianity is coming. And you can take this and go all the way back to the time of Moses. Are you familiar with the Bible? The first 5 books of the Bible are called the books of Moses, because they say he wrote them. But you can read the last one and figure out he didn't write it. Yeah, you can figure it out real easy, because it's chapter 38. That's the very last chapter of Deuteronomy. That's the last book. Deuteronomy is the last book of the 5. Chapter 38, that's the last chapter. And read it. In about verse 5, it says that when Moses was up on Moab, whatever that is, he died. It says he died. Now, how do you write that down? I died. It said, then he buried him. He who? Well, they capitalized the he to make you think it's God buried him. Huh? But by the way, in Hebrew, there's no capital letters, nor in Greek, for that matter. So that was arbitrary. He who, we don't know who buried Moses. And it says, and his grave is unknown even until this day. What day? The day that whoever wrote it. So whoever wrote that really was way after that. Okay? And you say, well, what's that got to do with terrorism? Well, keep reading, because in verse 12, the very last verse, it said that Moses was striking terror and doing acts of terror. That's the last thing it says in the 5 books of Moses of the Bible, that Moses was doing terror, causing terror. That's what it says. That's the word it says in the translation. So, what are you saying? Now, I'm saying I want to be like Moses, but I didn't say I want to do terrorism. What are you going to say? How are you going to explain this? Are you saying all the Jews are terrorists? I will say this. Not all Jews are terrorists. But I won't go the other way and say all terrorists are Jews. Would you? Now, the fact that you brought it up like that, they go, huh? There's also a statement, by the way, of the great-grandfather of George W. Bush. You may not know this, but it was in a New Jersey newspaper back during the Great War, they used to call it, before World War II, because his great-grandfather was the president of a bank that was financing stuff that was going to Germany. And they accused him of an act against the country of the United States and used the word terror in the article, applying it to him. So what are you really saying here? And you're trying to blame Muslims for stuff that other people really have been accused of in the past. Or how do you understand the word terror? And in fact, anybody who commits acts of aggression, unprovoked terrorism, anybody who is doing these things is out of Islam anyway. One of the key things to know about Islam is what Allah says about this. Allah says that He forbids dhulm. He does not do dhulm Himself, and He forbids us to do dhulm. What is dhulm? Any kind of oppression, any kind of terrorism, certainly. That's oppression, isn't it? And we're not allowed, you and I are not allowed to participate in something like this. And we were told by our Prophet Muhammad, peace be upon him, that you help your brother in dhulm, oppression, whether he is the one having it done to him or if he's the one doing it. And they said, we understand the first part, to help somebody who's having this oppression on him, but what about the second part? How do we help him if he's doing it? Said, stop him. Stop him. So we have been commanded by our Prophet, peace be upon him, to stop anybody, especially our brothers, who are committing any acts of aggression or oppression on other people. We're not allowed to do it, and we're not allowed to support it either. So anybody who thinks that Islam can be terrorism, I'm sorry, they're very, very much misinformed. Now, again, we'll go back to if you're in a battle, well, duh, of course that's going to go along with that. But when we're not at war with somebody and we're living in peace with our neighbors, how can we do anything to them? This is totally forbidden. It's the opposite of Islam. Let's share this with our non-Muslim viewers and friends who might be, paying close attention to my words right now and think, what does Christianity teach them? That you have to love your Lord and you have to love your neighbor. That's what they have in their book. This is in the book of Mark. You can read it in Mark chapter 12, verse 29. And they're asking Jesus, what is the greatest commandment? He says, to know, O Israel, because he was sent to the lost sheep, the tribe of Israel. Know, O Israel, the Lord your God is one Lord. First is to know God is what? One. Well, that's what we believe too, isn't it? Not two, not three, or four. One. Know, O Israel, the Lord your God is one Lord, and you have to love Him with all your heart, all your mind, and all your strength. And we'll understand that as well as not only love, but worship. Full dedication. We have to be totally dedicated to our Lord. We don't have to give this mind, heart, strength, body, all the rest of it. No, we just say abdi, ibadah, for Allah, and we get that. It all comes with one word in Arabic. And then it continues to say, and love your neighbor as yourself. Now we have in Islam a stronger thing. Not only we have to worship, love, and totally dedicate ourselves to our Lord, the one Lord, but we also have to prefer the needs of our brother over our own needs. So it's not as ourself, it's more than ourself. This is Islam. So we have two major religions here, basically saying the same thing, only as I already mentioned, both of these cases we're stronger. We're not just loving Allah, we're totally serving Him, we're slaves to Almighty Allah, and we're not just putting our brothers on our equal footing, we're putting our brothers on our head, above us, preferring their needs over our own. So how can either one of the two groups, Christianity or Muslims, how could either one of us be a part of terrorism? We couldn't be. This just doesn't work. So let us examine a little closer what's really going on in the world. You have people in their own countries who are fighting against what they consider to be oppression on them. This is what's happening. Now, whether they're right or wrong is not even the subject. I'm not into politics. I don't want to go there. But I'm telling you, these people who are doing what they're doing, they think they're right. Are they doing it in the name of their religion? They might. They might say they're doing it in the name of religion, but it doesn't change anything. If they're doing it for the sake of their God, if they're doing it for the sake of their country, if they're doing it for the sake of money, all of those things is in their head. Whether it's really for that or not, you have to understand what is the religion saying. You follow that? The religion of Islam is clear. And we know what it is. There's not two versions of Islam. There's only one. Now, those people who are going into those countries and attacking those people, what are they doing that for? This is actually something I think much more worth studying. What is the mentality of the one who can go into somebody else's country and attack them and kill them? Let's examine that. Not the one who's in his own country, because even a total atheist would stand up and fight if somebody's going to bulldoze down his house or come shooting his family, and it has nothing to do with religion. But what about the one who's going out into the other places? And you've got to wonder about that. Now, this is no way supporting what's happened on 9/11. What I'm saying is not supporting what's happened in any place where there's been any acts of bombings and terrorism or anything. But what we're saying is to examine what really happens, number one, who really did it, number two, and number three, if you can, try to determine what was the motivator behind what they did. And you're not going to find that it's from the true teaching of Islam. Nor will you find that it's the true teaching of Christianity. Because true Christianity doesn't do that. Now, they may wear a cross. He may even paint a cross on his gun when he goes into somebody else's country and shoot him in the back or whatever he does. But that still doesn't mean that's what Christianity teaches him to do, does it? No. The same holds true for the Muslims. If you would like to know what's Islam, study Islam. If you'd like to know what's Christianity, study Christianity. But don't accept the actions of some people to represent the teachings of their particular book. Does that make sense? Human beings are all the same in that they make mistakes. We say, as Muslims, God never makes mistakes. Ever. God doesn't make mistakes. So if He is telling us something, and we're sure that He said it, or He's teaching it to us, there's no mistake in it. It's as simple as that. So this is one of the ways. I'm just giving you some familiarity with the topic itself. I'm not saying you have to explain all of this to somebody, but at least you should know that. You yourself should know that Islam does not permit us to do any acts of dhulm, oppression, aggression, or even, you can't even go up and slap somebody, can you? No, we can't even do that. That's forbidden in Islam. Unless what? Unless somebody has slapped you, you're allowed to go back and get just your rights only. But if you exceed it even a little bit, you're in trouble. Isn't that true? Yeah. So it's better to do what? And they have it in Christianity as well. It's better to forgive. Let it go. And on the day of judgment, you'll get yours. It'll be fair. True? And this is what we know. Let's talk about suicide bombers. That's another subject that comes up a lot. People ask you about suicide bombers. How do you deal with this subject? The minute they use the word suicide, it's very easy for you to answer the question, isn't it? Is suicide permitted in Islam? No. If anybody kills themselves, they die as a what? Not believer. Is it? If anybody takes their own life, use the word suicide, you just canceled it out. It's not a subject for us anymore. The same is true in Christianity. Whoever kills themselves is a disbeliever. They go to hell forever. Now, what about the one who will plant a bomb in a car and then he runs away and the bomb goes off and kills other people around there? If a single innocent person dies, and I'm going to assume they're all innocent until proven guilty, so anybody that dies as a result of that, this is what? And it's in chapter 5 of the Quran, isn't it? Doesn't it say in the Quran, whoever takes one innocent life, it's as though they killed what? All of humanity. But whoever saves innocent life, it's as though they did what? Saved all of humanity. So again, it's very clear. Islam is not only saying it's not right, it's against it, and saying basically that's like the worst thing you could possibly do. Now we have commandments throughout the Quran forbidding us to take the innocent life. We even have it talking about one of the customs they had at the time of the Prophet ﷺ. If they had a girl born to their family, they were chauvinists, they considered it a major aib or shame, and they would take this girl, baby girl, out to the desert and bury her alive, right? But in the Quran, in Juz'ama, we find that the girl who's been buried alive is asking on the day of judgment, for what sin was I killed? Why was I put to death? For what? And she will get her rights on that day. So for sure, we know this is not a part of Islam. There's the teaching right there. Now, immediately though, you'll have some who will come and say, yeah, but what about those people, they did this, they did that. I said, okay, now look, that's what we said, we're not going into politics. This is not a subject where we're going to justify what people do or how they do it. This is not the topic. But if somebody is taking innocent lives, or even their own life, this isn't what Islam is teaching. So you cannot go to the Quran and take something out of context and try to justify and say this is why we do what we do. And the ones who are not Muslim also cannot go to the Quran and say that this is how Muslims justify their aggression or their terrorism or whatever. In fact, and I'm going to wrap up this segment with this statement, just take a minute to explain. Some people, again trying to attack Islam, will say, oh, it says in your book to kill all the Jews and Christians. And you go, what? How many of you memorize the Quran? How many Hufaz Quran? One? Any others? Two? Anybody else? Okay. By the way, Christians can't even memorize their book in the original language because they don't even know what it was in the original language. So we have the entire Quran in every city I visit. Many have memorized the Quran. It's always the same thing. So there's no doubt. There's no doubt it doesn't say anywhere in Quran to go kill all the Jews and Christians. That's a lie. You know it's a lie, and I know it's a lie. And what they quote actually is part of a verse, and then they add something to it. Look at this. Take the first few words of a verse and then add their own words afterwards. And the verse is 191 in Surah Baqarah. And it goes like this in the English translation. And kill them wherever you find them, ... and this is all the Jews and Christians. And of course the ... is where they stop. And kill them wherever you find them. Now what does it actually say in Arabic? Now, what's really interesting and sad at the same time is some of the translators are relying on some of the tafsir of the earlier explanation in detail of the earlier scholars such as Ibn Taymiyyah. Whereas he's talking about jihad, but it's not mentioned in the verse. nor is it mentioned in the verses in Surah Ma'idah, nor is it mentioned in At-Tawbah, nor is it mentioned in many of the verses where we find this exact same subject coming up again in the Quran. The word is not jihad that's being used here. Although jihad is used in the Quran, by the way, in a more general sense. The word that's being used is from the root qitl. Qatala. Qital. And it says actually in this verse, waqtuluhum. Waqtuluhum. Now, I ask ulama, scholars, exactly I need to know. And they explained it in Arabic to me, and then we talked about it in English as well. There's no doubt this says, and kill them, but it's a kind of killing. And if you said, well, there's no good kind of killing. Well, hold on, I may agree with you, but let's understand what the kind is. Because the verse before it is the setup, and it's not there, not in the Bible, not in the Quran, not even out of a newspaper, to take a statement that starts with and not read what came before it. And it says wa aqtuluhum. Wa means and. How come you didn't read the verse before? Well, if you read that, that totally dissolves everything they're trying to say. And of course they don't want to do that. They're used to using their Bible that way and playing with it, and they want to try to do the same thing with the Quran, not knowing that we memorize our book totally in the original language, and they can't get away with that. It's clear what it's saying in the verse before it is, for the Muslims are being ordered now to do what they were not permitted to do for 13 years. They were not permitted to retaliate against their tribal members who had been killing them, abusing them, raping them, doing everything in the world to these poor guys who were not allowed to respond back. They could only act in self-defense, but there was no organized combat to go against these the perpetrators. They were not allowed to. They were even put out in the desert to die with sanctions against them, escaped from that after a couple of years, and walked all the way to Medina, hundreds of miles away. Yes. And it wasn't until then that they were given the order by God in the Quran. Allah sends down the verse because they want to go back and perform the pilgrimage, the Hajj. But when they tried before, they'd been met by armed guards, armed forces who were ready to destroy them. But Allah is telling them now, no, you can go and you can make your Hajj and you can fight them. If they fight you, you fight them. But if they stop, you stop. Otherwise, you become the aggressor. Verily, Allah does not love the aggressor. The one who is doing dhulam is using this word, dhulam, which I already mentioned to you. And, next verse, and kill them wherever you find them, turning them out from where they turned you out. That's why they don't want to read the rest of the verse. Because all of a sudden it becomes very clear this is a specific issue dealing with a specific time and place and people who had turned them out of their own homes and taken their property, even taken their family away from them. Now you can go back and get what is yours, reclaim what is yours, turn them out from that, and if they're killing you, you can kill them. But let us understand this word, because in the first one it said fight them. In the second one it said kill them, but these are not related in English. But in the Arabic it was the exact same word. There wasn't any difference in the Arabic. It was only the imperative, whereas in the first one it was more general. And fight them, fight them if they fight you. That's what it says. In the second one it says, and kill them, because it is waqtuluhum. Uqtul. But how do we understand it? And the word is the same word Mr. Bush uses. It's the same word that they use in the Pentagon. It's the same word that they use on the front page of the New York Times when they talk about our boys who are going to do qital to the Muslims or to the people of Iran or the people of Iraq. Whenever they're going to go to them and engage in this, what do they call it? Do they call it fighting? No, they call it combat. Yes? It's combat. They get, like a guy who gets extra combat pay. That's what they call it, combat. And combat is the word best suited in English language for this instance. Because watch, combat them where they combat you. Turn them out from where they turn you out. Because this is mortal combat, meaning people can die. So we need the compound word in English to understand it. When it says وَقْتُلُهُمْ, then kill them in mortal combat because they're killing you. If it gets to that level, it's not just about, sword fighting here, playing around, target practice, it's serious stuff. But again, you would have the same, and it says you have to stop if they stop. If they're not killing you, you're not allowed to kill them. True? Keep reading now in verse 193, it gets even better. Again, they try to use this verse to say, spread Islam, even if you have to kill people, force them into Islam at the point of a sword. This is how they give their meaning from it. But it doesn't say that. Actually, the closest to English you can get from this verse is to say that Allah is telling them here to continue fighting them. Don't stop fighting them. Because, and he uses the word kital again, kital, this combat, until the way for Islam is made open for the people. Doesn't mean that they all have to accept Islam. It's not what it says. But Islam is open. Because, and look where Allah gives you the reason why. Because this is still better than the alternative. What is the alternative? Because there was fitna everywhere. That's the word Allah used, was fitna. What is fitna? Now, I did this because I want to show the non-Muslim or anybody studying the Quran for the first time how powerful these words are. What is fitna? They try to translate sometimes as test. You know that? Or trial, test. Boy, that sure wouldn't balance here. That an all-out mortal war going on is better than a test? That doesn't make any sense, does it? No. Because watch this. I asked the scholars, already I had an idea, but I want to ask the scholars of the language, because that's fair. How would they describe in one word seeing airplanes flying to buildings, the buildings coming down, lots of people dying, glass shattering everywhere, and I described the events of 9/11 and what happened by the Pentagon near where I live in Washington. I described that. I said, in a word, what will you say? They said, fitna. I said, really? They said, yeah. There's a big fitna. I said, yeah, I agree with you. I just want to be sure that's the right word. They said, yes. I said, okay. Well, we call it terrorism. They said, well, they have another word for terrorism also in Arabic. They said, but this is also a fitna. So, okay. So fine. Thank you. So now read it again and understand Allah is telling you that going into combat against your mortal enemies, those who want to see you dead, is better than allowing terrorism. So here we have, actually in verse 193, the first declaration, 1400 years ago, of the war on terrorism. Go out and fight them until there's no more terrorism. So totally, if that's what Mr. Bush is saying, we're with you all the way. No problem. If that's what you mean. Now what are they going to say? The problem is we didn't take the time to really learn what it is in English. You have an essence of it. You've sat with the scholars, you've talked with your teachers, you know that Islam doesn't permit us to ever go and hurt people for no reason. You know that we also have to defend Muslims and defend Islam. You know that. But at the same time, sometimes, and for whatever political background somebody may have and their hang-ups in their head, they may be adding a few things to Islam that don't belong there. And it's not for me to judge that either, but I'm telling you so that you and I can have at least an equal playing field with our non-Muslim folks. We're all living in the same world here. We need to realize that we have to give them their chance to understand, and they should give us a chance to explain as well. But as I already mentioned, a reference to them coming into our countries, Muslim countries that is, we'd have to wonder, what is your motivator? And I think that's a subject for another time, but certainly we are willing to talk about what we have. We'd like to know what they have, why. And if it's for vengeance, well, we want to get even with you. I don't think that your mother had anything to do with what happened on 9/11. So why is it okay for her to die all of a sudden? Just because she's Muslim, or just because she lives in Afghanistan, or just because she lives in Iraq, all of a sudden she becomes legal prey for, no. So we have to realize that this is a two-way street. And this is usually about the time when somebody will either get up and walk away and say, I don't want to listen to this guy anymore, he's crazy. Okay, fine. But what we discussed was fair, it was open. If they have anything after that, we'll bring it. And if I misunderstood something, tell me. I want to know. It's fair. And this is what Muslims have to be fair. We have to let them say what they have to say. We have to listen to it. And if we find credibility in what they're saying, then we should adhere to what is best. And if we find something better than what we have, Islam is wanting us to go what is better. As long as you have what? Testable evidence. As long as you have proof, you go to that which is proven. Simple as that. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen, you're watching, of course, the Deen Show, and we're here talking about the subject of dealing with harsh questions and how we should respond, and more important, how we should not respond. We don't respond in kind. If people are attacking us, especially verbally, we have to respond kindly. I want to end this segment by mentioning this, and I think it's very important. When people come to me with these harsh things, I try to train myself, instead of responding in the same way that, hey, come, you Muslims or terrorists, okay? I respond this way. Smile, ibtisam, smile, and say, thank you for asking me about my religion, okay? And then you can go from there. And alhamdulillah, Rabbil Alameen, the praises to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, Jalana Muslimin, the one who made us as Muslim. Until next time, peace. Assalamu alaikum.